for coming. I know this is the last session before filming and the dinner, so the reception, so that you may be tired. So our job is to get you continue to be excited about this session. It's honestly very surprising. It's almost full house, maybe bigger than plenary, my colleague said. But then I hope that then we can meet your expectation to make it really, really interesting and informative. My name is Naoko Ishii, and I'm the director and the professor at the Center for Global Commons at the University of Tokyo. And really that on behalf of everybody on this stage, I would like to welcome you. So this title of the session, what nature on the balance sheet means to business and investors in Asia, is today's topic. But you may be wondering, what do we mean by a business on the balance sheet? This is a bit of metaphor that we all know nature is quite invisible. It's not really investable asset yet, but we all know in this world, particularly in Asia, that we very much depend on the true value of the nature. At the same time, nature has been degraded so much, it becomes actually the macro-fiscal critical stage. So how we can really continue to invest in nature, it's our life support system. And then 2 years ago, Mark Gough and a few more partners created the Nature on the Balance Sheet initiative. The idea is how to chart the pathway to make the nature investable asset. And then today, very lucky, I have Mark Gough, who is the initiator, one of the initiators of this Nature on the Balance Sheet initiative. So he will tell you the story that where we are, and then also including assessment, very honest assessment, what works and what doesn't work, and what we want to go. So that is his job as the speaker. Then very luckily, we have 3 Japanese business leaders who courageously join this initiative, Nature of the Balance Sheet, without really knowing where we are going to, but we were together on the same boat and sail together, because we see some kind of North Star, but they will tell us where the progress is and what are the challenges and what are the strategy to cope with. Another lucky that we do have is that we have 2 business leaders and investors in Asia, Sophia and Fred. They will tell us what's going on in Asia and how we can really systematize those great examples in Asia. So that is the kind of the session today. So the first, without much ado, I'd like to ask Mark to explain what do we mean by nature on the balance sheet and then our honest assessment of where we are on this. So, Mark. He may introduce himself, but he's the CEO of the Chapters Coalition. Used to be Natural Capital, whatever. Now that includes all chapters. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Naoko. So this all came together because Naoko, I think you call this the mad people coming together. The idea that we can recognize the value of nature in the present accounting system. So a lot of people, particularly here in Japan, have been doing natural capital assessments for a long time. The first translation of the Natural Capital Protocol was into Japanese, and every time I come here, there's more and more companies that are applying that work. Those companies have also gone on to do the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which very much came out of this work. But what we're trying to do here is to go through a process of not only discovering what the nature is, which is the assessments that we do, but also going through into quantifying, and most importantly, recognizing that value. So actually seeing that value occur. And a lot of this has been prompted by an example that happened in Tasmania with a forestry company called Foraco, where they were a failing company. Everyone hated them. No one would invest in them. And an investor came in and put in the work to start understanding the natural capital benefits. And they were able to sell that company for almost 3 times the amount that they invested in it. So they made real money on the back of this. They recognized that value. Have we got the 5 steps on the... Yes. So the assessments that many of you will have done through a natural capital assessment is the first step. So we've been working up this ladder. And this understanding came together in a week that we all spent together, where it was in the middle of the week, but we thought we weren't going to be able to solve things. That's when the solutions come. So the second piece is when we start putting this into accounting. And I've just met with your colleagues who I think are in the room from the Japanese accounting body, and we've been talking to them about this work just over here. So then we are looking at actually getting this into the financial accounts. So this is something that is possible underneath the present accounting rules, as long as you can control, you can show measurement, and you can show proven benefit or liability, you can actually start putting these things into your accounts. And that's present rules. I'm not coming up with anything new. This is what we can presently do with the present accounting rules in a business. The trick here, though, is what we need to do is we need to start coming down the ladder as well. So with this, the codification that is in the laws and the regulations, we're working very closely now with IOSCO on the stock exchanges. We're working with many of the prudential regulators in banking. So those regulators, in the next few years, you will see them asking you questions about this, okay? Because they're talking to us to get ready for this. So if you're already working on this, you'll be ahead of the curve. If you're not, then you'll be behind. And then this pricing bit is the real success. Can we actually do something with natural capital that will mean that you'll get that financial return? Now, Naoko said to me that I've got to be honest about where we are. We haven't solved all of this yet. We've got the roadmap here, but when we went out recently and spoke to lots of businesses, to get that recognition in the market is still very difficult, because you're always only judged against one capital, finance. You're not judged against all four, which is finance and the nature, the social and the human. So the system needs to change to judge us against all four, but at the moment we're only judging it against one. But to get to that point, we need to do this work. So we know that actually businesses that start applying this work will be ready for regulation. Only a couple of weeks ago, Bloomberg has started putting this work onto its terminals. So when you look at a financial information, you can now start to see impact data as well. So there's steps being taken, but we know that there's a lot of sectors that are still doing a lot of work that needs to be recognized, and we know that that isn't happening quite yet. We've identified several audiences that need to be able to take this forward, not only the accountants that I've already mentioned and the standard setters, but also the central bankers, the people in the regulatory positions as well. And it's only when all of them start looking in the same direction that this will change. So we're on a journey here, we're making the steps, but we need all of us to work together to be able to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. As he explained, to me this is, or to us, this is more like a system curation, system coordination project. And that's why it's challenging, but it's so important and interesting. Now I'd like to invite the three business leaders joining this Nature on the Balance Sheet Japan Consortium. First, I'd like to invite Isono-san from OG. Isono-san, can you go ahead?
Is it better to just sit down here?
No, actually, please continue to to sit.
Sit. Okay. Thank you, Naoko-san. My name is Isono from OG. OG is a company which is a pulp paper and also producing the packaging material. And maybe there's a lot of Japanese here, so that it is quite famous that the founder of OG is Mr. Shibusawa Eiichi. Shibusawa Eiichi-san is right now used as his portrait is on the Ichiman yen, 10,000 yen. So I think a lot of people know about that. And the company started in 1873, so 153 years ago, our business started. And the reason why Mr. Shibusawa wanted to start this kind of a paper business is that as the Japanese economy should grow, the writing and printing and also the newsprint paper is needed because a lot of communication is done by the printing on the paper, so that a lot of Japanese may need to know what is happening, and for that device, the paper he saw was needed. And in fact, for more than 120 or 30 years, those communication was a very powerful device to material to be used in the Japanese economy, not only in the Japanese economy, I think, but in the world economy, to enhance and grow the economy. However, about 20 years ago, or maybe 25 years ago, a lot of the digital devices has come to the market, and they, unfortunately, or the thing is that in Japan, the year 2005 or 2006 was the peak of the demand for the paper, and in these 20 years, the market has decreased more than 50 or 60%, which is 40% is left only for the newspaper. That's the issue that's the thing that we are facing right now. So what we are trying to do is to change the wood itself to produce a paper, from just producing a paper to producing something else like a bioethanol or something which could be used for the plastic materials, which means that the petrochemical products could be produced from the sustainable wood material. And that's one of the targets that we are trying to do. But the other side is our main theme right now. What is the nature positive or the forest value itself is? Because when the Shibusawa-san started this business 153 years ago, he started by collecting the used clothes from the town of Tokyo. So from the beginning, our business was a recycling, sustainable business, but was not so much enough clothes in the market, so that about 100 years ago, we started to produce the paper from the wood material. So we moved to the we moved to the Tenryuga River area, but afterwards, about in year 1910, we started to do the business in Hokkaido, which is the Tomakoma area. And then those days, we were cutting trees for raw materials. However, we were also planting the trees. And those days, the CEO, which is also quite famous, is Fujiwara Ginjo. And he said that those who use the trees has a responsibility to plant the trees. So Oji is using the trees, so we are harvesting the trees, but we are also planting the trees, and this is continuing for more than 100 years. And as such, that we think we are also not only a sustainable business company, but also we are doing the nature positive business for more than 100 years. And right now we have more than 640,000 hectares of forest land, not only in Japan but also in the worldwide. And about 1/3 of it, 33%, is the conservation forest. So it's not only the industrial forest that we have, we are also keeping a natural forest. And for a company, we are paying paying a lot of money to maintain those conservation forests also. But the issue right now, what we are facing is the nature seems to be a free service or free assets, and a lot of one of the functions. There are a lot of functions from the forest, but one of the functions is that the forest is producing a clean water, and this Kumamoto summit is from the opening remarks. It is saying that there's a lot of groundwater here, and one of the reasons why the clean groundwater is producing is those rainfall. The rain is going through the land, and that land is cleaning the water, and so that there's a clean groundwater underneath. So, now why the clean water could be produced is that it's coming from the clean, nutritious soil is produced, and soil itself is produced from the mountain areas. If there aren't any trees, the soil itself will not be nutrition, because the leaves will fall to the soil. Underneath the soil, there's a bacteria eating the leaves, and that comes producing a lot of nutrition. And that kind of so forest has a lot of functions, but the problem is it seems to be a free asset or the free service. And what we have to do right now, our challenge right now is how to value the nature or the forest itself. And OG is now engaged in several activities, and one is the working with Naoko-san for the nature on the balance sheet initiatives. And as Mark right now said that it's not only, we have to connect in the future to the market side, so that the putting nature on the balance sheet, but also that will make some kind of a market value. And that's what we are working on right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Isono-san. In fact, when I understand, I hear from you and your company that this assessed value of this conservation forest is not really kind of endorsed by auditors. Not really. Yeah? Okay, now I'm on. Yeah, no, actually that when the Isono-san, his team told me that there was an assessed value of conservation forest is not really endorsed by auditors. I thought this is the problem and how we really change that kind of valuation as a system. That really triggered me and work with Mark and others. How can we really implement this nature of the balance sheet roadmap? This is more like a box 3. That's where we were stuck. Realization of the assessed value by the financial, agents. So that's where we are. Now we would like to hear from Sumitomo Forestry. So Iizuka-san, could you please come in and tell your story?
Okay. Thank you for having me here on this panel. And my name is Yuuko, Head of Sustainability at Sumitomo Forestry. So I think the question was that why did you join this mad people, right? And so and the reason that we decided to join Naoko-san's this mad initiative is that we wanted to show as a gesture that it's a leadership that, because we do believe in why the forest and forestry do have values which is invisible for some reason. So it's a gesture that we want to be part of this group and then want to drive this move. So I think it's not a competition, but our company was founded 335 years ago. So this is what we call like wood cycle, and then when I'm not allowed to use the PowerPoint that I bring this sheet, and then the sustainable, the cyclical forest management, and then we do trade timber, and also we do manufacture like floor wood and all these wooden materials, and then we do build wooden houses in Japan, Australia, US, and then also not just houses, but mass timber, larger non-residential buildings. And also that we do operate 6 wood biomass power generation plants in Japan. So in theory that we used to say that from upstream to downstream, but it's a cycle that at least the carbon, it's recycled. And then so the reality for a business that's the 70%, close to 70% of our profit comes from home building in the United States. So for us, that when the downstream consumers view what kind of building materials they want to use, that we strongly believe that wood has the solution for all the problems like climate and nature and equity, because that everybody knows that trees sequester and absorb CO2 when they grow, and then it's stored even after it was harvested. So in the harvested wood product, which is timber, then if you use, like, look at Horyuji Temple, more than 1,300 years it's been there, and then, so you can store the carbon. So if the timber comes from the sustainably managed forest, that has a huge benefit for building these buildings. I mean, of course, you need to use some concrete and steels, but it's much, much better in terms of CO2. So it's easier to argue about CO2, but now people are talking about green steel, green cement, but yet that if you do use sustainably managed forest-derived biomass materials, that it has a lot more that, as Isono-san explained, we can talk all day along that how forest is important and then how it's been undervalued or under-recognized or invisible. So we can, we always talk all day long among the forestry sector. But so if we use wisely these materials, that it would help to drive the investment towards the forest, that is nature aspect, right? And then which does provide lots of ecosystem services, which is very invaluable to all the human and all businesses. So we do believe that these, using sustainably managed forest and then the materials coming from those forests is really the solution for all these challenges that we are facing. But we need to explain with numbers, hard numbers, right? And then which we haven't been successful so far. So 130 years ago that, we started our business 335 years ago, but then for the especially copper mine operations, and then from over harvesting and also the air pollution from the copper smelting, the surrounding mountain and the area was devastated. It was like all, degraded mountain. And then there are many, disasters, flood, and then, so we learned a lesson in a hard way, about 150 years ago. So we started to plant trees, which we called it the Great Reforestation Plan, which happened like 1894. So that was like 130 years ago. So we planted, so we knew, our ancestors knew that by heart, that how, leaving the devastated, degraded nature as it was, it wouldn't be sustainable for the community and for the business. So, without all these nature on the balance sheet, concept, they did invest even more than the revenue from the copper mining business. So we knew it by heart, but now we need to prove it, show it to our stakeholders. So that's why we are part of this Mad People, initiatives, and it's very important we show that how these forest assets and all these ecosystem services does provide invaluable, values. So that's why we joined, but at the same time, it's really a hard job for us to actually measure how all these ecosystem services. So even before trying to monetize or trying to put it into the monetary value, just measuring the nature itself is really hard. That's where we are now. So we are almost like on the first step and then the second step. That's the reality. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for sharing your story of why you joined the Mad People. Now, I'd like to invite Tatsuya Sudo and from MSAB. And what is your story? And then you are from insurance company.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tatsuya from MSAB Insurance Holdings. And people, you may wonder, after speaking from OG Holdings and also Sumitomo Forestry, who actually owns a forest, why an insurance company is involved in this mad project. There's actually two reasons for that. One is it's related to nature. In our company, MSND, had a strong belief in nature for nearly 2 decades. And we have a strong belief in the power of nature and then how that power can reduce is small size relatively, but it was on the ground. And thanks to that, we were able to produce the first Japanese TNFD task force member from our company. So it shows how we are committed to this nature field. The second reason is that this project is actually not directly related to insurance. And I'll tell you the reason why. Currently, our industry, there's a hot word. It's called the protection gap or the unsurability. I'm not going to go deeper in this subject because I can speak 20 minutes. And I want to keep on time management. So in a nutshell, this climate change shift and various factors has made the world, especially in the global south and some part in the global north, made it very difficult to access to affordable insurance prices and terms. And then that gap, we call it the protection gap, or you can call it insurability. If you try to solve this insurability by insurance underwriting or insurance product enhancement, I think there's limitations. You cannot solve that by yourselves. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to look at the outer source. What is making that environment? It's very obvious that the risk is becoming higher. So how can we, control the risk? We call it risk reduction or risk prevention or risk control, whatever the term you want to say. But it's not directly related to the insurance product itself, but it's actually the surrounding conditions, which actually decides the terms and conditions. And historically, the insurance company is a very conservative industry and also a very reactive industry. So if the surrounding conditions were not good, our answer was very clear. Our proposals will not be good, the premium rates will go high. That generated the protection gap, in my view. We have to change that cycle. So the insurance company has to probably break the shell within the industry that we are in right now and get into the outer world. Let's say, if the risk reduction is important, just claiming we need risk reduction, why don't we get involved in the risk reduction side? Currently, because historically we were not so much deeply involved in that dimension, I don't think a lot of people are aware of, why insurance companies are involved in that field. But there were many, many claimers who was actually playing in that field for many, many years. But I think we need to break that cycle, that mechanism. We need to get into that dimension, and we need to have a more stronger voice in the risk reduction side. And I'll give you one great example. And this morning we had a plenary session, and it was announced that this water positive designing center was launched. It was under the leadership of the city of Kumamoto and with the consortium of Suntory and Higo Bank and MSNAD. If you look at the project itself, it's about to secure the water resistance of the underground water, and also to enhance the prevention of floodways, etc. So insurance itself is not involved. There's no insurance product in that project, but that's okay, because the benefit coming from this initiative will, in the long run, will benefit the insurance industry because it will make a resilient society, and in the long run, it will lessen the disaster risks and make the insurance company more comfortable to write business in that region. So again, coming back to why we're involved in this project is that this is not directly related to insurance, but it's a consortium with various people. Not only the insurance industry, but the people from Oji and the forest and the Sumitomo forest and other people. Hopefully, this consortium will expand. So that's my hope.
Wow.
Thank you.
It's a very encouraging to hear that yes, we need to expand so that maybe this insurance gap will close, and also it serves the benefit of the people. So great story to hear. Now I want to move to the two guests from Asia. That Sophia, maybe I first come to you, and then maybe you are the leader of this Asian climate investment group, and I understand you already have a lot of projects ongoing on the ground. So tell us what's going on the ground and how we can also systematize it. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sophia Cheng. I'm from Taiwan. Cathay Financial Holdings is one of the largest financial group in Taiwan. We own the largest life insurance, second largest general insurance, second largest commercial bank, one of the largest asset manager. We also have a venture capital and a PE fund. So very often people have a long wish list what they think a financial group can do. We set up our CSR team in 2012, and since 2016, we were the original founder for Asia Investor Group on Climate Change. Myself is the chairperson for the organization. Today, we have more than 80 members in Asia already, and together manage more than 35 trillion US dollar of assets. So since learning with international peers, we moved from climate knowledge to climate action, to water, biodiversity, to nature, to impact investing. And over the past years, we also focus more into just transition. Can we think more about people-centric solutions? So we also sponsor ABPN, an action project which focuses on people, local community, micro SME. We also think how can we do more effort to boost the ecosystem like your Met consortium as much as we can. So I'm very happy last week we have just complete our 10th anniversary of Cathay Sustainable Finance and Climate Change Summit. We have 5,800 people registered. They represent more than 80% of Taiwan's stock market cap, more than 50% of the country's emission. So it's a very good international platform that people can learn and do together. To me, on nature is the foundation for so many things. I'm very happy to see we move from climate expanding to nature. So Cathay Financial Holdings is one of the earliest one who adapt TNFD. We do use Anchor whenever there's something we're happy to participate. So with the initial analysis, we also integrate that into our investment, our engagement program, also into our risk management framework. And then how can we do something when it's quite early? So we sponsor two nature methodologies. One is we sponsor the biodiversity credit methodology by National Taiwan University Forest, and it's in low mountain, so everyone you can use the methodology to replant the trees to enhance biodiversity. We also sponsor a very interesting, very cool project. It's an organic tea farm in Taiwan, already 11 years. No irrigation, no water, no fertilizer, no pesticide. And they initially have production decline at year 5, actually surpassed the original point. And they give us so much confidence. If you treat the nature right, nature gives you more. So I think nature credit, nature movement should be different from carbon reduction, because nature brings you immediate economic value. It's very worthwhile. And so with that, now we are working on the tea farm project. We find after the methodology was approved, we identify a organic tea farm, use the methodology, and now we are helping them to become a startup to sell the tea. And so from idea to business, commercial scale, and then scale up. This is something we think as a financial institution, we can bring not just sponsorship, but also help them to make it commercial. And we also, I also coach a few companies on regenerative agriculture, AI solutions for agriculture. Because in Southeast Asia, even if you have a lot of farmers, it's too hot to go outdoor. Where in North East Asia, even if you have land, there's simply no one to do the farming for you. So can we find more solution to make it easier to save labor, to save water? Yeah. So I think when we think about value on nature and balance sheets, we talk about value. We try to think about value for the nature rather than put a price on the nature, because I think nature is not just about money. So we can invest, we can lend, we can also sponsor. So as a corporate, I think for Cathay Financial Holdings, we always think about how we impact the environment, impact the nature, and how nature is affecting us. So I think try to assess the impact and try to do some projects. Many times people think about lack of data, lack of knowledge, lack of principle, but we should be the one who do it first. And we have data to collect, and we can collectively find out the principle, what is the best way to do it. So I really believe in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, I would like to ask the Flex to come in and to talk about what's going on in your territory. But then I understand you are doing a lot of things beyond Singapore, beyond Asia, so that then you have a lot of projects and which will tell us how to systematize those great stories. So Fred, you are on.
Thank you very much, Naoko-san, and thank you for inviting me to speak here. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. So my name is Fred. I'm from Gen Zero, which is an investment company headquartered in Singapore. We are 100% owned by Temasek. Temasek Holdings. We were set up 4 years ago with an initial capital commitment of 5 billion Singapore dollars to invest into climate solutions in 3 areas: technology, nature, as well as carbon markets. We see all these 3 as quite interrelated. All are important because technology may give you the commercial returns, but it may not have a lot of near-term climate impact. Nature may not always give you the kind of commercial returns that we want in private equity, but it certainly can give you the near-term climate impact because it's actually lower cost per ton of carbon. And we have a third pillar on carbon markets, not because we want to generate carbon credits or make a business out of it per se. We do it because we think carbon markets are a very efficient mechanism to drive money, capital, into the underlying solutions. We see carbon credits as a way of subsidizing something that may be too expensive today, or where the business case may not be so obvious for the underlying project. And this is something that I will come to. Now, allow me to spend the next few minutes maybe speaking on 2 broad topics. One, commenting about the importance of why nature and why nature in Asia. And secondly, I want to touch a little bit around the business case for investing into nature and why this topic is important. But to begin with, I share with you a few lighthearted stories. Everybody is thinking about a MAD initiative, right? Now, in Temasek, we used to have this thing, I think we still do, but we used to have this thing called MAD KPIs. But so it encourages people to do community work, to learn a new skill, to spend time with families, and do all these different good things that are outside their business work. But MAD, in our context, stands for make a difference. So actually, it is quite important to sometimes have some MAD initiatives. Now, when it comes to nature, I always find myself out of my depth here in Japan. This is, after all, the land that has the concept of forest bathing. Is it Shinrin-yoku? Am I saying it correctly? Shinrin-yoku? Yeah, right. So clearly, I mean, the Japanese people as a culture, as a society, understand the value of nature beyond just the dollars and cents. Right? Now, the main religions here in Japan also have a very close affinity with nature. If we think about the Shinto religion, for example, there is a very deep connection with understanding nature, understanding life more broadly, right? So I come to this question of values by, of course I'm in Japan, we'll use a Zen example. Now, if, for example, a tree were to fall in the middle of a forest, did it actually happen? Can you hear the sound? Is it real? So this leads me to ask a question. If a forest is being cut down in the middle of nowhere, far, far away from you, why do you care? Why would any of us actually care? So this comes to a question around what is the business case and the value for driving a lot of capital into nature investing. I suggest that there are basically 3 things, and maybe it can be encapsulated in 3 C's. The first C, compliance. We care because there are rules and regulations and policy that obliges us to protect nature or to do something to enhance nature. So this can come in the form of environmental protection regulation. It can come in terms of forestry protection requirements and so on and so forth. But increasingly, you might also see this in the need for nature-based disclosures, TNFD and other things. Compliance is the first reason why we care. question is, are regulators moving fast enough? And what is the cost of not complying? So that's the first C, compliance. The second C, I would suggest, may be about climate. Now, we all care about the climate and we want to do something about climate change. But the second C on climate is important because nature solutions actually provide about a third of what is needed to close the carbon gap. And in Asia, we have massive carbon sinks. For example, the tropical rainforests in Southeast Asia are a very important natural resource. And there are three major ones. Indonesia and Southeast Asia, there are some in the rainforest in Africa, and then of course you have South America. But these are the major carbon sinks, and they are readily available. Sometimes you just need to protect them, and we have to reclaim some of it. So that's the second reason why, for climate action. But I think that increasingly in today's world, we cannot be overly idealistic and naive. If we just focus on saying climate and protecting the environment, it might only get us so far. I feel that it is important for us to make a proper business case for investing into nature, and that leads me to the third C, commercial. It needs to make commercial sense. So we are seeing a shift, I believe, from values to value. And what are some of the values that we have? Now, if you think about the broader macro environment or economy, right? A recent report that Temasek and us sponsored in 2025 to study about the impact of the green economy in Southeast Asia suggested that investing into bioeconomy type activities can generate something like $40 billion in annual GDP uplift for Southeast Asia and something like 340,000 new jobs. Okay? So we need to talk a language that others who are not part of the climate agenda can also understand. GDP, revenues, profitability, jobs, economic uplift. So these things will happen. Now, Japan has a very big agricultural sector. So clearly protecting agricultural resources is something that we all know is important. But I would say that it is even more than that. So one example that I shared with Naoko-san and others during this trip was a project that we are doing investing into sustainable rice farming in India. Now, Asia is one of the places in the world where rice is the #1 contributor to greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture and not cattle. If you go to most other regions, cattle usually is the #1 contributor, right? But that is because we are a major rice consuming countries, right? Societies. But why does rice emit so much GHG? And that's because traditional methods of farming requires us to flood the rice fields continuously for about 2 to 3 months, right, as part of that cycle. And with the flooding comes a lot of anaerobic decomposition in the soil. And it is that decomposition that generates the methane. If we flood the fields less, there will be less decomposition, less methane emissions. Now, interestingly, many of the places where we grow rice in Asia also happen to be water stressed. So where we are visited the smallholder farmers that we are working with in India, they shared with me that in the past 2-3 years, right, that they had actually witnessed a 50% drop in their annual rainfall. Across India, generally it's somewhere between 50 to 70%. I mean, just less rain. Now, if we do not help our farmers get comfortable with growing rice and using less water, over time, it is not just about the climate problem, it is an economic livelihood problem for the farmers, but it is also a food resilience problem for the rest of Asia, right? Now, the good thing about alternate wetting and drying, which is a practice that we are encouraging, right, does not involve lower production from the farmers. In fact, there is some cost savings because they will use less pesticide, less gets washed away. So this is an example where we can make the economics work. Now, increasingly, we are also having other business models involving things like sustainable forestry, which our colleagues at OG and Sumitomo and all that are actually doing. That actually helps us to not just replant trees in degraded lands, but also have a sustainable economic model for the local communities that we are helping, which is so important in the global sense. So if I can conclude, Naoko-san, by saying that actually, when it comes to putting nature on the balance sheet, we need to shift the conversation away from just simply talking about values, about why it's important to protect nature, to a question of value where we are explaining the commercial incentive for deploying large amounts of money into protecting nature, and shifting this from a conversation from the Chief Sustainability Officer to the CFO. And that's only the time. That means it's important to put nature on the balance sheet and get this going at scale.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. You said so well, but you also raised a question that how to make it happen. So this is going to be my last question for everybody, every panelist. So that the question is very clear. And there's a lot of assessment. We all understand the value of the nature, but we are a bit of failing to how to really, in a sense, monetize that value of the nature recognized by financial market. So now that the no order, that anybody from this 6 people panel, that maybe share your wisdom with the audience, how to make it happen. I mean, at the end of the day, value is important, but how to monetize, if the monetize may not be a very good word, but the value recognized by financial market so that it can become an investable asset. And is that a rule or a regulation, a compliance issue, or kind of peer pressure, or whatever you think which may work on the ground? What's going to be your bet? So that's going to be my question for everybody, so that anybody can jump in. Because also Iizuka-san made it very clear that the assessment, even assessment is difficult. Then how you can make an assessment to the next stage, so that everybody share the challenge. But you could also share your sense of where we can find this lever, actual lever to move forward. I see that all. The Isono-san's mic is really low, but okay, I'll go ahead.
And I'll go ahead.
Please.
My idea, okay?
Yes, please.
First of all, Ishii-san, you mentioned about the financial industry, and I just wanted to definite what the financial industry is. We, the insurance industry, belong to the financial the sector by definition, but it's only a part of it. I think when everybody, if you ask the financial industry, what is it? It's the banking industry. I was in London 2 weeks ago to attend the London Climate Action Week, and I actually attended an event with a lot of bankers and also insurance companies. And of course, the insurance company talks about protection gaps and the word insurability. But on the other hand, the banking industry people were talking about finance gap and also unbankables. And I think basically I think we're talking about the same thing. I think the root cause is the same, but I think we stick to our own industry. So I thought to myself that maybe if we, first industry that we might to tie up with that, maybe the banking industry, and that we have to talk about together to tackle the same things that we face to. Because basically, fundamentally, we're chasing the same thing. Yes, so that's number one. And second, of course, we need private and public partnership. Everybody mentioned that. The question is how. I think one thing is that if the public sector could be the catalyst, bringing the banking industry and the insurance industry together to tackle one question or the common problems, that could be one solution.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to join? Okay, Fred.
Maybe I can break down this question around how to make it happen into 3 broad areas for nature. And I must confess that at the background, I have in mind the idea of using carbon markets as a proxy for investing into nature, only because it is from a financial asset or asset class or product point of view, a little bit more developed, I can scale it. Okay? But essentially, the logic will still apply. 3 things. 1, supply side quality. 2, the demand side, which is the value, why would businesses want to do? And 3, ecosystem infrastructure. Okay, let me touch on the supply side. If we think about nature-based carbon credits and all that, you know that in the recent years, there have always been this discussion around quality. But increasingly, with advanced technology for monitoring, reporting, verification, also with standardization of quality benchmarks like the ICBCM, core carbon principles, and so on and so forth, I think that largely speaking, the supply side quality assurance is more or less in place. We also have new
And for other parts of the nature quality, I mean, we have a lot of agriculture, forestry experts that can attest to the quality of those projects. So the supply side, I think, is okay. If we think about the demand side, I hope that that will become better. Because actually, at the end of the day, none of these things work if customers and consumers and investors don't see value. So why would you invest? Why would you spend money? Now, I've gone through some of those points before, but I would conclude on saying that on that point, it is important for governments to show leadership. Because at the end of the day, if there are reputational risks or there are uncertainties over the project types that we need to invest in, ultimately you need the governments to be able to stand behind the corporates and give a little bit of protection. But the most important thing I feel is on the ecosystem side. And for that, there is actually also a linkage with the government. First of all, while I know that Sophia doesn't quite like the idea around pricing, but price does give some signals. And the signals can actually drive some action. If there is no price and cost to this, it is impossible to get people to then appropriately value nature, right? So that's one. Or for that matter, decarbonization. Secondly, it is important to clarify some of the legal and accounting nature for carbon credits and nature so that it is easy for the CFOs to actually understand what they are investing in. Third, it is also important for us to start to have things like proper disclosures that will allow companies to make the correct claims and to also explain what they are doing better. Now, many of these ecosystem infrastructure things will require a lot of partnership across the entire ecosystem. Like, for example, I will conclude on this one example that has to do with insurance. Now, many of us in the climate space are worried about the risk from physical catastrophic events due to climate change. So you protect, for example, your warehouse, right? And you have insurance because you're afraid that maybe it will be damaged by wildfires or it might be damaged by floods or things like that. Now, a study that I spoke to some people who came out from Stanford, and when they were doing some of these climate modeling, they realized that actually it's very seldom, very seldom that they pay, but it is the second and third order business disruption risks.
Yeah, I see that Iizuka on the come and Sophia.
And I don't have the answer, and I can't give that eloquent speech, but I just want to make one point that yes, we can learn from carbon credit market, but what bothers me most is that carbon and other initiatives so far is to mitigate risks, and everything is about how to measure how you can mitigate risk and less CO2 emission. But for nature, we can do more. We can provide positive impact. So while I do agree to your basic approach that yes, we can learn from our past experience, but my concern is that nature is so complex, and then we have to understand this holistic approach. So if we stick to this, baseline and whatever the additionality and all those things that what we stick to with the carbon credit market, maybe it would underestimate the value of what the nature credit market can bring in. So of course the integrity of the supply side is very important. But at the same time, I really do hope that in these, we don't have time, we really need to be, moving quickly. So we have the simple right answer, but at the same time, I still want to comment every single time that nature can bring a positive, outcome. It's not just to mitigate risk. So that's. I do hope. Why I don't have the answer, but I hope that all these smart people in the room will try to come up with a solution to integrate this positive side of the nature to the lessons we learned through the carbon credit market. Thank you.
Well understood, because the intention behind this mud group is how we can change the economics to appreciate the positive side of natural capital. So very well said. So do you want to come in?
Thank you. I agree with both. But the more I say, the more I get headache, because TCFD, TNFD, S1, S2, many things, everything costs money. If I spend a lot of money, I rather put the money to support another startup for innovation. So it's very good intention, but I think you two need to connect to make somewhere in the middle. I really hope we can invest in forest. Some nature asset that can give a 100 years of return. I think that's sustainable. And unluckily in Taiwan, we don't have the luxury. And I think nature credit, including biodiversity credit and others, is very different from carbon credit. Because in reduction CO2, you need to put a lot of money in. So it's kind of encouragement, and people who emit too much need to subsidize people who save the credit. Where nature, when you start to do something, you create economic value right away. I take the credit more like Olympic gold medal, rather than a tradable commodity. And second, I think it takes time because we already have TCFD disclosure. Give another few years, I really think you will start to emerge into some framework. It takes time to build consensus. But we see the past. We have TCFD, we have CDP, and we have blended finance, we have impact investing. Of course, that nature and balance sheet is possible. So I have quite good confidence if we have another 2 years and maybe start with some pilot program, it should work. And lastly, I want to suggest that it is best that eventually if we want to consolidate into financial statement, it will be best to discuss with international standard like IFRS, so people can learn by doing, do by learning, and after a couple pilot, maybe in 2-3 years time, they can have initial consulting by the world. People can give some feedback. And lastly, please start with easy to understand, make it easy, don't make it too complicated because corporate will be scared and walk away. Thank you.
Great advice to everyone. Isono-san?
Yeah, well, as Frederick was saying that if you want to invest for the nature or something like that, I think there should be some kind of a return or benefits should be obvious for investing, and that's something a very textbook answer for me. And as one of the forests that we have has a lot of nutrition flowing into the ocean, and the ocean side is having some kind of a positive impact. And there's a Okhotsuku Sea facing our forest, and that's a very big scallop area. So there is a connection between the forest and nature and the other nature side. So those kind of benefits, if there are can show those kind of benefits, I think the investments will come into the market. And that's one of my textbook side answer. And the other one is maybe a regulation may be needed. If the regulation comes out, the market may grow much bigger. But what I'm thinking right now is that after attending the OECD meeting 2 weeks ago at Paris, they were discussing about the climate change adaptation, which means that they were discussing how to fund the adaptation, get the money, who will fund it. And the answer was how much benefit that will have. Then have to show the benefit. Other than that, nobody will fund the adaptation. That was the discussion going on for 1.5 days. But what I thought was is it everybody very much serious about the climate change or this kind of a nature negative issues? If everybody is quite very much serious about this, people will spend the money for protecting the nature or the spending money for not to have a hot weather climate change. But in reality, there's a lot of geopolitical issues happening in the world. How much money is it, spent there? And the Naoko-san was saying at the main stage with our royal family around 12 p.m. noon this time. He was saying that at the COVID time, everybody was spending money for the COVID. Why? A lot of disaster was happening. So if people started to think this will have a big impact to our human beings, others animals, then there may be a big change. But before that, we have to make some kind of change so that we have to show what the benefits are, and then they start to move from here. So, thank you.
Thank you. So,
So in the work that we've been looking at, about a third of the benefit, the recognized bit, comes from the markets, from carbon, biodiversity credits, which are growing, that sort of piece. The other 2/3 is really about trust and belief. And we invest in art because we believe it's going to grow. We invest in crypto, and I'm not quite sure why, but we believe it's going to grow. We invest in all of these, I mean, SpaceX, come on. So there's all of these things that we invest in because we believe in them. Okay? Now, nature is at the core of everything we do. I mean, this comment from WEF that it's 50% of GDP, it's not, it's everything. It's absolutely everything is dependent upon nature. There isn't a planet, what are we standing on? So, to me, we have to build the confidence into this work. That's what it is. And that's why we're working with the accountancy bodies and others. Because if we can have that confidence, the difference between the book value and the market value in most companies is about three times factor. Okay? In IT companies, it's 3,000 times factor. Why is that there? Why do we believe that a company is worth more than what is on the books? Well, that's what we're doing here. We're putting numbers into that gap. If we can do that and give you even 10% more information, then you can bet on this. You can bet on this and you can invest in this. Because to be honest, if you don't invest in this, if you don't invest in the thing you're standing on, and you're investing in space, you're going to lose out. So you have to be able to do this, and that's where the confidence, the robustness, the standards and things are going to be the thing that is going to make the difference.
thank you. And actually, I would say that welcome to the mud group. Yeah, now I realize it's also the make a difference. So that, but very well summarized by almost everybody. I learned a lot. That just a few things in addition to your last summary, remarks. Then how we can really change this concept so that our mindset from just risk or negative towards positive. Yeah,
Yeah, how we can really change our mindset, the perception from just the negative or risk approach towards positive. How to appreciate the value of the nature, also with the monetary benefit, because that drive. I know that Sophie may not be happy, but we need to find a way to drive the market economy. So that's a kind of way to go. I also understand a lot of questions, and the good thing about we have a lot of instruments to do the more like on the supply side, but how to create a demand, the good demand, high quality demand is another very important task. And then how to do this holistic, how to capture the holistic value of nature. It's so important. It's still, we are very at the nascent stage according to Yuuko-san, and a lot of challenge going forward. So I believe that as your last remark and also Isono-san's remark, that can we really create more trust so that the people can bet the value of the nature. That is the longest challenge to me. So how we can really close that gap, the trust gap, the confidence gap is a lot important, but a long way to go. But I really would like to thank everybody joining this session. It was almost the end. Then again, as Takamado Nomiya said today, that welcome to the mud club. She didn't say so, but she emphasized the importance of the partnership, and that we can really come together to do this very challenging journey together. So I really would like to ask you to, if you are interested in topic, please get in touch with us so that we can really create a stronger partnership going forward for this mud journey. But thank you so much, and please give them that.